everything go with Allison yesterday?
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, she decided she's not gonna work here. She was like, "Wah, I can't focus when I'm around you, kid. I love you so much. Wah." You know how needy she is.
No, Ken, tell us. How needy is she?
Hey, you? Yeah. Oh, this? No. We were talking about Alice Wonderland. Wah, through the looking glass, baby. Wah.
Great save.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you guys.
It is one of the nicest things about doing this job that you get to have multiple interviews with people like you. You're a wonderful guest to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations going into season 2.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Let's talk about where you left off on last season, where your character essentially follows in the same path that you followed in your real life. I knew that the character was loosely based off of you in your life, but I didn't know you were going to sort of go down that rabbit hole as well.
Yeah, no, in the season finale of last season on Dr. Ken tries stand-up comedy for the first time at the Laugh Factory, which happened in real life when I was a doctor at an HMO in LA, and that's what I did, and did well enough to get managed and kind of do it pseudo-professionally. This year, we kind of addressed that head-on, and as in real life, I chose to stay in medicine. I did some stand-up comedy on the side for many years, but I chose to stay in medicine. And so, you know, in following the tradition of making the show more grounded this year, as you do in all comedies, I really wanted to, doing comedy is part of a real character trait for Ken, but he also values family and his medical job more important than the stand-up comedy. It was a mix of things that happened to me in real life for me to do this full time, and it was really doing the movie Knocked Up that really led for me to quit my day job. It wasn't stand-up, really.
In the episode, it's an old college friend who's doing pretty well in comedy, played by the great Jeff Ross, who's on a motorcycle outside, apparently.
Excuse me. Yes. Emma.
And is that how it happened for you, that it was somebody else that you was a friend of yours from college or something that led you on stage, or did you just have sort of a natural burning urge to get on stage and perform?
You know, it's funny. This loosely based, I wouldn't say on a college friend, but when I was at Duke, I went there for undergrad. We ended up booking Henry Cho, who's this great Korean comedian, and I was part of this Asian Student Association group, and I was one of the people on that committee that had booked him to do stand-up comedy. He's one of the funniest guys in the world, and watching him actually inspired me to do stand-up. So we kind of fictionalized some of those events, like in the finale. But no, I had a lot of influences.
Was it much later in your life that you tried it for the first time in the same way that your character does in the show? Or had you been, even while you were sort of in medical school and a young doctor, kind of doing stand-up a little bit on the side?
Right. What happened was, in real life, about a couple of months later, I tried it. I tried it at a bar, not at a comedy club, but I was in North Carolina at a bar I was just about to go to med school at University of North Carolina and did at a bar in Raleigh. So it was but I had not done an LA stage until maybe, I don't know, when I first moved out to LA, about 16, 17 years ago. So yeah, so I'd really just done a lot of local clubs, or basically bars that had turned into one-night comedy events, once a month or something like that. Yeah.
Because for your character in the show, it's almost like an urge that he didn't know that he had. The way that it comes up, it suddenly sort of comes out of him that he's going to try doing stand-up comedy. Whereas in real life, it was something that you had kind of been working on the side a little bit.
I'd worked on the side for a little bit. I wasn't married with kids at that time, so a lot of situations is a little bit reverse, whereas Ken on the show, already married with kids, and those are, he had more responsibilities before he could pursue the stand-up, whereas I didn't have any responsibilities at that time except unto myself, and I had not started med school yet, so yeah.
Let's talk about someone that you cast on the show that's in the first season. I think he'll be returning for the second season. He's comedic legend. I love him almost more than any other comedian in the world. Yeah. Dave Foley.
Yes.
He's just Kids in the Hall are, in my opinion, the greatest sketch comedy show of all time. I love it so much. What's it like working with Dave, and how did it feel to be able to cast him in your show?
It's there's still a part of me every day, and it sounds insincere to say it, but I go home and I when I'm alone in myself, I'm in my thoughts. I'm like, I can't believe I'm working with the guy from News Radio and Kids in the Hall, who is a big towering figure in my comic worldview. And now that we become really good friends, this year has been even more of a joy because I'll often go to him for advice, not only on a comedic acting level, but in terms of story, in terms of, he's a writer, he's a producer himself, and he just has a great comic vision. And so to have him as such a resource, on many levels behind the scenes is invaluable. Dave Foley's so great, he'll often pitch jokes, not only for him, but for every character, while we're doing the show. So he's become like almost like an uncredited writer, and I just do it because I have this burning desire to get it out. I just need to get it out of my brain, and then we can move on. He just loves comedy and feels comedy that much, and comedy's so ingrained in his DNA. To work with someone like that who's that passionate about the show, not just his character, is invaluable.
It's so nice to see him playing a character that's slightly off the mark as well, like an offbeat character, because I think because of News Radio, which he's wonderful in, he was sort of cast as the straight man for a long time.
Right.
It's nice to see this sort of curveball straight man that he is in this show, which is he's kind of the straight man boss, but he's also sort of a weird pervert as well, and kind of an off guy.
No, I think about that a lot, to your point, because knowing how he was a comedic center. He was the Bob Newhart of News Radio, and how in this one he can basically just keep hitting home runs. He just dunks everything. We're all like dishing off to him for the slam dunk. And
in many ways, you're the comedic center. You're the center of the show. You kind of have to hold it together.
Yeah.
And be the straight man.
No, absolutely. And that's knowing that and it's been such a great experience for me because I don't know, because having gotten my start on more of kind of outside characters and all the
way outside
characters, Community, Knocked Up, Hangover. It's I always knew I had, just like any other actor, I have the groundwork to hold a scene as well as to slam it home, and I get equal satisfaction doing both.
Was that slightly nerve-wracking for you going into the shooting the first season and doing it, that you would suddenly be more of the kind of grounded center figure of the show rather than the sort of like outlandish outsider that sort of comes in and says, for lack of a better word, like the Kramer of the show a little bit?
No, I wanted that because having been the Kramer for so long, for like 6 seasons on Community and for 3 Hangover movies, I wanted to go in an area where I could do something a bit more grounded, at least hold the scene and give the Kramer blows, writing wise, if you will, just to the other characters, because that's just something that if you look at some of my work in Knocked Up and some of the work before The Hangover, a lot of that was, I was playing, even I guest starred on The Office like 10 years ago, where I was basically the straight man, as a guest star for Steve Carell. So having had that ability, and wanting to kind of go back to that, I definitely had that itch, and I still do, to be honest. I definitely, acting wise, I want to do a variety of different things and play a variety of different, shades. Yeah.
Do you even have time to consider other roles at this point, considering you're writing, starring, producing this show?
No, right now this summer, no. We started in May in the writer's room, and I've been there virtually every day. And it is kind of a year-round project. If I was just a straight-up actor, yeah, you would have 2 or 3 months for hiatus, and if you could get movies at that time, you could go do that. And that's what I did on Community, and I was able to do like 2 Hangover movies while doing Community at the same time, and those are great. But right now, there's just so much responsibility on my shoulders on the show, and it's not just the acting; it's the writing, it's getting guest stars, doing actual exec producing,
How do you get guest stars?
A lot of times we'll go through a casting director for just like any other show, but like just yesterday I don't want to mention any names, but no, I reached out to 2 people, one I know very well, one I don't know as well, and had conversations with them, And I've been known to call their agents as well, and call their team, because as a producer, that's what you would do. I would say, oh, this is, well, I would like to have this person on the show, and maybe for multiple episodes, and this is my plan to do it. So as a producer, it's really cool to, talk to from that end and to do that. Yeah, I did it I came to New York yesterday to start doing some press, and then right when I got to my hotel room, was just going back to work. Yeah.
Just starting to call people, reading
Yeah.
scripts. What would you say has been the thing that you've most learned after doing the first season and going into the second season? Because last time I talked to you, you had essentially finished the pilot and maybe done maybe 4 or 5 episodes
Right.
at that point, I think. After having completed 22 episodes of a show that you're, working in the writer's room, you're starring in, you're producing, what's been the sort of biggest learning curve for you?
You can't get better unless you just do the job. I mean, there's no substitute for improvement in this business than experience. I don't care if you've went to film school, acting school, writing school, directing school. Yes, you'll have those tools that will help you build that vocabulary of whatever field that you're in. But having the nuances and knowing what works and what doesn't for a particular project, it's all about experience. And that's what informed my own acting. I mean, by the 6th year of Community, I really felt like, although I was already famous, but I actually became a good actor because of Community. I mean, Hangover got me famous, but Community, I reached those 10,000 hours required to be good at something because of, 110 episodes of that show.
What did you notice you could do that you felt made you a good actor? Was it did you watch yourself and say, oh, I'm better in this now? Or was it like a comfort level of how you felt on camera?
It's funny, just talking about Community, I remember there were just things that I would do that were very broad and over the top that I thought was perfect for the show, and it was written that way. And I felt like I remember like 2nd or 3rd year, I was like leaning on I forgot exactly what it was. I watched myself in one episode, and I wasn't in it that much, but I really just hated my performance, and I thought I had the instincts was to do this, and it was even bigger than it needed to be. And then I just remember, like, it's one of those things you watch yourself on tape, like, you just kind of kick yourself, and I could have done that better. And I never told anyone until after the show was over, but that was my goal, was to it was a tiny little acting movie, but I wanted to, the 4 through the 6 years, I wanted to kind of correct that. And it wasn't that big a deal, and probably not noticeable on screen to a lot of people, but I felt it. I felt like I was definitely going on crutches, and I wanted to. And I just remember telling myself, I gotta keep pushing myself, and.
Are you a competitive person, kind of like slightly?
Yeah.
Like you come off like really funny and delightful, but like you're kind of type A inside.
Very much so. I mean, I think I'm competitive with myself. I mean, I wasn't competitive with my other castmates or anything like that. I mean, I always operate under I always operate under the belief that everybody on that show and the cast and the writers were all way more talented, way more experienced than me. I just want to keep up with them. So my whole goal in life is just to keep up. It's not to be the best. My whole goal.
I mean, I think that's the best kind of goal, because if you're in a position to hire people, you hire a lot of people that you think are better than you. You try to keep up with them, and it's just making yourself better.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we've done this year. Like, even in the writer's room, just hiring other writers that, they're not just being funny, but they're so much better with story, or they can outline a story. Like, things that I've learned. You talk about, like, from what I learned from last year, just story is everything. And we had some great episodes last year when our greatest episodes, when the story itself, the jokes will come, the humor will come. I've learned that, the jokes and the ad-libs, that will come naturally, and that's kind of what I do. But story, that you have to, that's what I long for this year, is to get better at breaking story, which is
story's hard. And
it's so hard. People have no idea, like, when you're outlining a story and that's something that hasn't been done before, doing something different. And this summer I was just on a mission to just do different stories. We just did this Halloween story for the episode for Dr. Ken, and it's as community-esque as it is. We didn't film it in front of an audience. It's a Korean ghost story. Like, my character's father tells my character's son a Korean ghost story, because my son claims he's not scared of anything Halloween-related anymore, and he tells them the scariest story of all time, and we basically shot it like a single camera, and had a different look and feel. and it took me. It was almost like where if Community and Dr. Ken had a baby, you know, it was
Is
a little
that
bit of
something
that.
that when you
Yeah.
when you make a decision to go sort of kind of radically change the show for an episode, do you have to run that up to the?
Oh yeah, you have to run down to the
flagpole?
flagpole to Sony, our studio, and ABC, our network. And actually, I have to give
Do
ABC.
you have to like repitch the show essentially?
No, well, with this episode, I have to give ABC so much credit. It was actually the network that really pushed this episode to happen. When you have a network that actually encourages us to think outside the box, and ABC, like we had an idea to do a Korean ghost story, and our ABC executive that oversees the show, Nathan Varney, well, shout out to Nathan. He actually said, "Guys, just make it the whole thing," and we did. We're like, okay.
So just make it like a short film,
Make it like, yeah. And so to put that eyes on us, I mean, I'm like, wow, it just got me so excited. And it's like the most, I think that Halloween episode is easily the most ambitious, probably the coolest thing I've done on the show so far. Yeah.
Is it a made-up Korean ghost story, or is it like a sort of classic Korean ghost story that most people wouldn't know?
It's both. It's a little bit made up, and it's a little bit following tradition. The two writers who wrote it, Jim Brandon and Brian Singleton, they did an extensive amount of research, more than I knew about. They're called Guishins in Korean. Korean for ghost is Guishin, and Ken's like, I ain't afraid no Guishin. You got all those requisite jokes and things like that, but then he starts telling a tale that's pretty intense. And I actually helped in the summer come up with the ending of the story. I stole some bits from some of my favorite, not even horror movies, but to me it's a little bit of Princess Bride, where you have a narrator telling the kid the story. It's a little bit of Princess Bride, a little bit of Community, a little bit of ancient Korean like Halloween lore, and a little bit of Angel Heart. And I'll just leave it at that.
Angel Heart?
Yeah, Angel Heart. I'm in
Robert
my
De
mid
Niro?
40s. Yeah, it's like I stole some, an homage, and it's not noticeable, but in my head, I came up with this ending.
There's like a solid 6 people total in your audience that are going Angel Heart.
That's why
right there.
yeah, that's why as long as you steal, as long as you sample from the obscure stuff, it comes off as original.
What do you find to be the hardest part about story? Because I remember like a few years ago, Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park would talk about story, and they'd say most people get tripped up when they try to tell stories because they just go and then, but a story has to go, this happened because, and that happened because of the thing before. It's constantly sort of lapsing over itself, which is kind of the difficult part of story, keeping everything connected.
I think part for me, and I'm just a newbie writer, veteran actor but newbie writer. But for me I think the hardest thing is how many twists are you going to do in that story? You're going to do too many twists? Is it not enough twists? Is it so flat? And I've been guilty in my own writing of just kind of making the story maybe too flat without enough twists. And sometimes I find myself going. I write very emotionally. To me, I'm an emotional guy, and I really write out of emotion, and I don't really write out of jokes or anything like that. So it's kind of, and so I think if I go on writing on intense emotion, actually, when you're out of that emotional zone, it's kind of a flat story. That's my own deficiency.
Well, it's one of those weird things where
I
you
need
get-
to twist it up.
you
But
get
unfortunately, I have
scared of
12 other writers that know how to write, and they help me with my mistakes. And I'm very open about it, because I just want to get better at it.
Well, you get scared of twists when you're writing because you're like, that doesn't feel grounded or that doesn't
Yeah.
feel real.
Yeah.
And you need someone else there to be like, no, what you're talking about is just boring.
Yep.
We need to, someone needs to do
I've been
something.
accused of that, and I think that, and I'm very open to that suggestion. And it's kind of cool not being a writer by trade when other writers are telling me like, oh well, we're not gonna go, even though I'm really passionate about telling a story a certain way. When I'm informed by that, when I see two or three other people saying this is why it's not working, I'm like, okay, like I'm not precious about it. I'm not like, oh, you got to do it, just because the actor thought of it that way.
A single ego does not make a good show.
A single ego makes a horrible show. It's a village, and this year is even more of this village. So no, it's a collaboration ideas, because my showrunner Mike Sikowitz always says all the time, which I really live by. He goes, you have to be decisive, though, when you run a show. You have to make decisions. And you're going to be right and wrong half the time. But you have to keep moving forward. You make a wrong decision or wrong turn, okay, you write it. But you have to be decisive and keep the show moving forward. So that's what I've learned, too, in doing 22 episodes.
So I loved when last season ended that, you were dabbling in stand-up comedy. And I'm wondering if there because of that and because of the turns that your life has taken, if there's a sort of long-term plan for Dr. Ken in terms of what's going to happen with his career and his life, have you thought about sort of
Sure.
almost telling that story over a number of seasons?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think right now, this being kind of like the early part of the second season, keeping it grounded. Look, when I did stand-up, I did Comedy Central. I did a bunch of televised stand-up comedy, and I didn't quit my day job, and I kept my day job as a doctor. Who knows? There can be some watershed moment that causes Ken to rethink his whole life, you know. And it could be something, and I hadn't thought about it. I don't know exactly what that is. May not be working with Judd Apatow and Knocked Up. May not be working with Todd Phillips in The Hangover. It could be some other watershed moment that causes you to revisit your whole thinking of what am I doing here, which is what happened to me, you know, working at the HMO when Knocked Up happened. You know, I filmed that. I wasn't in the movie that much, but it was such a, I mean, basically Judd had told me, you know, you're my discovery, and I will consider you for future movies, and he did put me in like 4 of his movies afterwards in small roles, and he really
To get people used to seeing your face.
just to get people used to it. I know his face is a bit asymmetrical, but just turn your head to the side, it'll be fine. And then
I just mean get them to know who you are.
getting them to know who I am, and he really
Not literally used to your face.
You ask Judd, he'll say it was literal, but it was, but
It
no,
was going to take some time on Ken, so I put about 6 movies.
character actor. Am I right, guys? Not leading. And then he was really great at like taking care of me, and because when I went back to work after filming Knocked Up, that hadn't been released, wasn't to be released for a year. You know, it was one of those things where you just knew it was time to go.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like we're seeing serialized television across the
Yeah.
board happening, and where it's still not happening is in the multi-camera sitcom.
Yeah.
And the idea that we could see your character, we could be planting a seed for a way that your character could change in season 3, in the sense of change his whole career and his family life's dynamics because of that career change, is fascinating to me, because that could be one of the few times that like a multi-camera sitcom actually has a very serialized dynamic to it.
No, it's true. I mean, I think you're right. Television is getting more serialized, and arcs are being, like, even on our show right now, we have arcs that are being planted right now. And it's so funny, though. My goal is to, not because we're on broadcast TV, it's just because of the medium that we're in. You know, I do want this show to be taken for what it is. It's a fun Friday night family show that's loosely based on my life. We'll bring in the hard funny when need be, but we're making it way more family. All the stories, to me, the interesting ones are the ones that are story-based, based on family, and really having more of a focus on that. And through to your point, if these arcs happen naturally, you know, which I want it to be, I'm open for that, because I didn't know that my character would do stand-up comedy at the end by the season finale. We hadn't even gotten the back 9 yet for me to envision that, you know. And I do have some ideas, you know, for the show and my character and the whole show down the line. But it's also nice to have, I mean, things being so serialized that it is, you know. It is actually nice that, let's say tomorrow our show is going to broadcast, and it's really cool. We're going to have viewer feedback from Twitter or otherwise, and it's good to get that feedback. And I remember Dan Harmon said that on Community. It was great when they're writing the show while they're filming it, you know, because you got a sense what worked well with the viewers and what didn't. Sometimes doing it, you know, in a vacuum is sometimes good and sometimes it's bad, you know, depending. Every project's unique, but sometimes you go down this rabbit hole on something that you've written in a vacuum. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be as good as you want it to be. So there's a checks and balances, you know. I think there are pros and cons to both types.
The audience keeps you real.
Audience keeps it real, and definitely this show is just about keeping it more real this year.
Speaking of the audience, let's open it up to questions from the audience. Who's got questions?
Hey, Dr. Ken. My question kind of piggybacks off that. So I always wanted to write comedy, and I took improv, and it helped me realize that, like, whenever I think I'm straight manning, I'm not, and, like, almost people are laughing at me. So how do you, like, analyze, I guess, like, your thoughts, or, like, what is funny or what's not funny, or how do you use what people think is funny and you don't think is funny?
That's a great question, because we're a multi-camera show, because we shoot in front of a live audience, and it's funny, those debates happen more on our show than other shows, like let's say on Community, where it wasn't shot in front of an audience. So there is that kind of tone of like, sometimes the audience will laugh and be like, that's the funny joke that we'll use in the edit. And sometimes we'll come up with like 5 or 6 jokes prior to shooting it. And then, but it's funny, I think that for me, when I'm in the edit bay a lot too, I help edit the show or give supervising the edit of every episode. And what I thought was funny because the crowd thought it was funny, or maybe the crowd didn't think it funny and I thought it was hilarious and I want to stick to my guns. I've done both. Sometimes the answer was somewhere in the middle, you know, and there have been many times where my character, I'm actually the first guy to take out my own jokes in the thing because it's not about me being funny anymore. People know that for whatever they think about me being funny. People know my brand, so I'm very secure about that. To me, I want them to think, oh, the show's funny, and to me, everything is for the good of the show. And so I've been known to, like, sometimes if I've played it too charactery in a couple of scenes and I didn't ground it enough, I'll definitely take out my bits to make everything more grounded. So it's just a different phase of where everybody else is in their career. But I think to answer your question, it's about following your instincts of what you think is funny first, and then going from there. You'll figure it out from that moment on. But I think to answer your question from your point of view, I think it should be what you honestly think is funny, you know, even if other people don't. Doesn't matter.
Did you ever have to find a middle ground when you started editing yourself, that you were maybe a little too hard on yourself? And then there's also the idea of like dealing with people working on the show as the face of the show, where they might assume that your note is coming from sometimes being the face of the show, that you had to sort of earn that trust that you were actually just trying to cut the show to be as best as it could be?
It was really nice that they, from day one of editing, I had actually produced some other things too. I did this ESPN like 30 for 30 short and I wasn't in it at all, and it was this documentary about Reggie Ho, this guy who was a kicker for Notre Dame, became a physician, and so I really learned a lot from there, and I was really into the editing of that, and to me, no, that really never came up, because from the very first episode I was involved in editing on Dr. Ken, the editors and the showrunner knew it was just never about me. It was only about the show and making sure that we get the right. And there have been times too where I definitely run it like a democracy. If we have like me, the showrunner, and the editor, a lot of times I'll be like, I really like that joke. Let's say not of mine, this other character, really love that joke. Of what she said. Let's keep that in. The showrunner's like, I don't think it landed. And then a lot of times I'll look at the editor, what do you think? And the editor will be like, I don't think that joke landed. Okay, then it's out. So I really try to run it like a democracy, where I want the majority should be on the same page. And sometimes many times I've been on the minority where like I'm the only person that's been like, you know, where I thought that was really great bit to include in, and I'm very comfortable also with deferring too. Like,
so you've never had a moment where you stormed out of the room being like, well, whose show is it now?
No,
not Ken.
Not yet.
Dr. Ken.
The season is early though.
Showrunner Mike.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it says Dr. Editor here. Huh? Dr. Showrunner? No, it says Dr. Ken.
Might say Dr. Fired soon.
It might say Dr. Fired soon. Yeah. So put that fart joke back in.
Next question.
Well, the doctor is definitely in. Hey, Ken, thanks for being here.
How long have you been holding the doctor is in for?
Dude, he's been holding it in like a fart.
Too much pride.
That guy's been holding it in like, yeah. Nice shirt, by the way.
Thanks, man. All day, Ricky.
All day.
Going back to 2009, Ken, I want to talk about your experience with Jeremy Piven being the first ever celebrity guest host of WWE Monday Night Raw. You know what? I know you guys were there promoting the goods. I love that movie, by the way. What was it like being inside the ring against a guy like John Cena?
That was still, to this day, one of the most surreal experiences I ever had. To promote the goods, Jeremy Piven was a celebrity guest host of Raw, and Jeremy and Adam McKay, who produced the movie, were like, let's get Dr. Ken in. The Hangover just came out. He's newly famous, so let's get him be the co-host. And growing up on wrestling as a kid, I knew I knew a lot of the, but I'm older now, and so I didn't know as many of the newer wrestlers. I knew a lot of the kind of the, I guess, the agents or some of the writers, so they were like the people I grew up on. It was really surreal, and John Cena couldn't have been the coolest guy. I mean, that we scripted it so we almost did an angle for some. I can say it now, but we actually almost continued. There was a thing where John Cena threw me out of the ring, and actually I went on Jimmy Fallon and called out Cena in a mock promo, and I shot a promo on him saying, like, you know, that didn't go how it was supposed to go, dude. You hurt me for real. You know, it was like supposed to be a thing, and then maybe for SummerSlam I was gonna do like some sort of thing and cost him the title, and there was talk about it. I really wanted to do it, and but I was shooting, I think, Community at the time. I think it was just due to schedule, but I really wanted to do it, and to hang out with Cena backstage. I mean, there's a reason why he's the flagship of the WWE. I mean, he just, I mean, it really is, to watch a guy like him care about product and what he does and about what the show, I mean, it's all about the passion for the project, you know. And he even said, you know, it takes a lot of sacrifice to I think about that a lot, where John had said it takes a lot of sacrifice to do what you do. And in this business, especially in WWE, where you're constantly on the road, you're not seeing your family, this is a sacrifice you have to make. And do you really want this? You know, a lot of people think they want it, but they don't. But that, and I almost extrapolate that in my own little comedy world, and it's like, yeah, what are the sacrifices that you make, you know, to get to that next level? Are you really prepared to do the next level thing? So, no, I love Cena.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hey, Ken.
Hey, buddy.
So I was wondering how, why did you go into, why did you decide to be a doctor at first? And was that for practical reasons? And did you always have a desire for comedy while you were studying?
Yeah, I mean, I
medicine?
think it was a bit for practical reasons. I think that I always joke I was Koreaned into doing, you know, pre-med. And coming from, like, my parents, you know, is economics. My dad's a retired economics professor. We had an academic background, you know, an academic family, and you know, I had never had any performing inkling. Even when I was in high school, never thought never had any desire to be an actor. I just wanted to get into a good school. If I could get into like an Ivy League school or Duke, that was all I cared about. And then once I got into Duke, then I discovered acting, and discovered I loved it. Discovered I had an aptitude for it, and then. But it was a weird thing, man, because I was not on scholarship. We weren't a wealthy family, and I was firstborn son. I did feel this obligation to finish what I started, and I do think there's value in that. And I think I've had the best of both worlds, where I did kind of finish what I started, and I always tell my wife, you know, if Hangover had never happened, I would have been very happy. I got to a point later on in my medical career when I did my residency in New Orleans. This is all over the place. The story's all over the place. But after I graduated from med school, which I liked med school, it was okay, but I loved my residency where I learned how to be a doctor. That was a moment where, like, okay, you know what? I could do this the rest of my life and I'd be happy. So I think by the time Knock Up and The Hangover came, it was at such a great point in my life where I felt mentally so stable with my own life, where it actually, in a way, helped my acting, and it helped get me my own show where I feel like I'm able to think pretty clearly on some things, you know, career-wise. You know, I'm not really, I don't know, I feel like to be famous at 40 is not a bad thing either, you know.
Well, you're not struggling to be famous right now. You're trying to have a good time and trying to learn and try to enjoy the job. I'm trying to enjoy the job, trying to get better at my job, which probably is a deep-seated thing that's from my academic roots. I mean, everything, I think, every year, from every movie and every year of Community and second year of Dr. Ken, it's more than just like, oh, am I gonna be famous or people gonna know? It's not about that at all. It's more like, I just want to be better at this. If every year I'm getting better at my craft, whether people know it or not, that's most important. I mean, at this point in my life, yeah. And I feel like, and I know I'm getting better every year. I'm getting better as a producer, and it's a great feeling. That kind of keeps me going right now. Absolutely, you're getting better every year, as Dr. Ken is, which premieres tomorrow night, right, at 8:30? Yep. Ken, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you guys
Congratulations.
for being here.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.